So inshallah, we'll be moving forward because this is going to be the final, at least the final slides for this particular set of chapter. Let's say it that we consider this as a chapter, which is how to make your houses as homes. So inshallah, let's just remember what we talked about last time. Let's go really quick over it. We were doing how to make your houses as homes. We talked about the foundation of that relationship, and we went in some details about, well, in order to make it as the place of tranquility slash second and peace, you definitely needed certain characteristics to basically bring about that harmony. We went in details with that one. Then we went into the priorities and we said it's like a prism, just like you would have a beam of light, which basically in a prism, it would tell us what that consists of, which basically are the primary colors. So we said that's exactly the same thing. When you're talking about Sharia, you're talking about fiqh. It's basically taking you into analyzing a number of different paths, a number of different ways that are crucial to making this stability, to making this peace, to making this harmony within the relationship. So we that opened up the whole idea or the whole basis of the fiqh of priorities in Islam. So we went in details with that, and then we went into speaking about, okay, well, so me as a married woman, what are my priorities? So we talked about the husband, and we said there are the children, there's the house, and we talked about the husband being a priority, and we said, well, it basically goes into the same priority, the deen, nafs, aql, ird, mal. Then we used that, and then we went into all of these different foundations and what they mean, and we took them one after another. Then we also went into, okay, well, how do I make this this whole idea of لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا? We went into second. We explained it through the lens of Quran and Sunnah and not a biased interpretation. So we're not going to do some, metaphorical interpretation. So we needed to make sure that we go back to Quran and Sunnah to really break it down for us on how we can obtain and we can attain فالصالحات قانتات حافظات للغيب. We explained that one, each and every single word of it, but not through our interpretation. We basically went through the ahadith to make sure that we understand salihat not as a metaphorical interpretation, but as an interpretation that goes back to the Quran and Sunnah. We then also went to the mawadda and rahma, that we kind of went a little, combination of metaphorical or at least tazkiyah and as well as a hadith. You could see we kind of, mentioned a couple a hadith, an ayah right there to kind of put and cement all these different things together. And we said, so this mawadda would be in the heart, but what would process in the heart is basically what you see, what you say, what you hear, and certainly what basically is developed right there in part of our body is basically what develops in our private parts as well. All of that has a direct correlation between our attitude, our behavior, what happens in the heart, what happens in our in our minds towards this person that we're living with. So then we went into, okay, how do we get to the rahmah? And we basically talked about the relationship, that it's like a garment, what that garment looks like, and we talked about the heart. We also talked about, seeing through the lens of mercy. In other words, living up to the principle, even if the other person may not necessarily be living up to the principle, you adopt the principle even when others fail to. Just remember that one. We also talked about the other part, which is the children. And we talked about the priorities in raising children, and we took the lens, the hadith, this hadith of that Sahabi Malik ibn al-Huwayrith, and we basically went through that inspiration, how the Prophet ﷺ was giving them key things to learn how to do. أقيموا فيهم علموهم ومروهم. There's a relationship that you basically have to build within yourself, around you. You teach them, you give them instructions, you build this connection, this relationship, and that basically is all to be within the foundations of teaching them the deen, nafs, aql, ird, mal. We went in details with all of those different areas of how we teach our children deen and what the priorities were, how we teach them how to take care of themselves, and certainly their life, whether health, insurance, or health, probably priorities and food and all of these different things, or whether the education and maintaining the mind, and certainly the ird as well, with the different types of one, teaching them how to do that mannerism in how they relate with the other sex, or how they relate with themselves, or how they relate in maintaining whether hygiene, maintaining, let's say, distances, etc. Then we went into mal and wealth, and how the income is made, how it's distributed, and what we would consider as our priorities. So in terms of mal, of course, distributing the wealth to generate what is necessary in order to build their deen comes the first priority. The second priority, their health, the food, what they're eating, etc. The third priority is basically the mind and what is serving their education. Or, of course, the fourth one is basically maintaining that these children are living in areas with perhaps security, with an area where it has good maintenance for themselves, good maintenance for their deen, for certainly for their modesty and so forth. But one thing I forgot to mention, which is the house. This one, I forgot why I skipped it, but thought right now to just go back just a little bit in speaking about house and how we maintain house. The first one is tahara. That's the first thing. Learning how to not mix the different things that contain najasa and the impurities with things that are supposed to be tahir. So just like you're talking about tahara as the deen, nafs, aql, ird, mal, that's the same thing. If in order to maintain it with tahara, you're talking about maintaining the home based on deen. Then they'll go number two, the art of maintenance, maintaining the home to basically cover and serve our nafs, whether we're speaking about security or whether we're speaking about, how to make it healthy for everyone. And certainly, when we're speaking about how to make it healthy, one of the things that I absolutely despise is smoking, because you're putting everyone's health at risk, including yourself. And you're not just being merciful upon yourself, but you're also putting other people at risk. Certainly, putting other people's life at risk is definitely not fair, because they have the simple right of having clean air. You polluting their air, polluting and simply, even affecting their teeth, affecting their lungs, affecting their heart, and affecting them physically is absolutely not fair, and is simply not just haram in terms of harming yourself, but it's also haram in her harming the people around you. And secondhand smoking, we have a lot of studies that basically tell us about the dangers of secondhand smoking and its dangers on the people, and how they would be inhaling all that smoke. It is absolutely disgusting. So when we're talking about house, maintaining the house, whether we're speaking about the air, we're speaking about the water, we're speaking about maintaining the whole place to also serve that area of second, which basically brings in the mind, that area of second area of peace, tranquility, to the point that it basically lets everybody not live in anxiety. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant you all, big spaces, because small spaces once we're stepping on each other's toes, that definitely adds on to the friction, adds on to the anxiety, because it is part of our own instinct that we as human beings, just like even in animals, that they would consider a certain area that is a territory. Territory is very important to talk about because wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Territory is extremely important to talk about because just like when you see in animals, they would consider that this area is my territory, whether we're speaking about space, where they feel sometimes I can just sit and relax without ever anybody intruding. I can just think on my own, space where I could perhaps even, especially for girls, that I can sometimes reduce from my hijab. Yes, they are my mahrams, but I would like to reduce my hijab and feel that I don't have to bundle up even when I'm in my own home. Giving them that space and that territory is also helpful for the person to basically grow even in their mental health and feel that I can have my own space to basically feel, those moments of calmness. This is extremely important. That brings in that second. So when we say within the home, that it's supposed to be, yes, a place of tahara, yes, a place that gives you, a healthy place to be in, or even healthy for your mind, or whether we're speaking about remembering that the house is a place of aura, that your information is not going to be not by your siblings, not by your parents. Even if your mother wanted to share it with her sisters, please understand that I do not want this information to be shared. This is part of making those houses as homes. When we say the house as a home, we're also talking about giving not only your respect as a mother or as a husband and wife, but we're also talking about the respect and basically the maintenance for every single person that is living within this household, in order to make them recognize and feel that this is their safe space, their safe territory. Just keep that one in mind, especially women. We tend to be talkative, we tend to be ventilating on each other's expenses and not realizing that, this isn't within your border. This isn't within your territory. And therefore, expressing it or talking about it without the consent of others is an amana. Whether somebody is calling you and you putting them on speaker without them knowing that they're on speaker, or without them giving consent that they're on, that you would put them on speaker, or whatever it is, or even perhaps somebody told you something and then sharing it with your husband, or sharing it with your sister friends, or sharing it with your women friends or girlfriends, or whatever you want to call them, without that person's permission, is definitely not being a person of amana. Because just like when we're talking about the houses are aura, people's private information is also part of that. So the fifth thing is basically again ilmal. Okay, ilmal, money management, and certainly learning the art of needs and wants. And we're talking about there's that darurat, those hajiyat or tahsinat, and those hajiyat. Those are extremely important to basically talk about darurat. Those are the things that you really need as a necessity for your life maintenance. التحسينات or hajiyat, sorry, are basically the things that you really need. And when we're looking at that hajiyat or the needs, those basically differ from time to another. So today, of course, if you definitely consider the most important needs, we're talking about the most of two important needs are probably an oven, or we're talking about maybe a stove, okay, and also talking about the refrigerator. Those are two important needs. In fact, they can go up to the level of necessity because without them, you'll probably not be able to cook. And two, you'll probably not be able to preserve the foods long enough and they eventually get spoiled fast. So we're talking about refrigerator and we're talking about stoves basically being key things within the household. And of course, certainly, if we want to add things like tahsinat, perhaps maybe give an idea, perhaps maybe a bed instead of a mattress, maybe تحسينات tape, maybe a couch instead of just mattresses to sit on, maybe tables, desks. Yes, that would definitely, add on to the comfort in our homes. Perhaps maybe other tahsinat, air fresheners, perhaps maybe beautiful things to maintain. And I don't know what you put, what you consider curtains. Definitely they're going to be part of darurat, but of course, from one type of curtain that may cost you maybe, I don't know, $30, but it does the job, to perhaps fancy curtains that may cost you $300. Just adding another zero, I guess. But it definitely makes a difference. But at the end of the day, just consider that money management. How much money do we have is also, and speaking of which, in order to define what is considered tabdhir. Okay. In order to define money wandering, money wandering is going to depend on the amount of money that you have. So, what does that look like? If you have, let's say, let's give an example, $2,000, what is considered a priority? Is is the priority supposed to be going perhaps, yeah, maybe a trip to, I don't know, a trip to the Bahamas or on a cruise, etc. I don't know if $2,000 is enough. I think it's not, even if it's for one person. Definitely it might cost you $4,000, not two, but just, I don't know. Let's just consider you already had some savings before. So how do we consider the art of money management? You're going to consider the deen, the nafs, the aql, the ard, the mal rule. Again, is the money that you have enough to maintain your deen and the deen within the household? Yes, great. Now you can go. Is the money enough to maintain your life, to maintain a fresh air, to maintain the necessary things for maintaining your life? You've got a fridge, you've got probably this. You're going to go darurat, you're going to go for necessity. Then you're going to go for number two, which is the needs, basically al-hajiyat. And then you're going to say, okay, do I have enough to maintain the education, maintain the aql, maintain a healthy space, healthy place, etc. All of these different things. Yes, I do. Do you have enough money to maintain al-ird? Yes, I do. Okay, now do you have enough money to, let's say, so is this only covering the needs or is this covering, well, necessity and the needs? Yes, it's covering the necessity and the needs as well. Okay, now you can go and probably serve things that are considered as tahsinat. Let's call them tahsinat, meaning wants, extra things. Perhaps maybe to you an extra thing, air freshener, maybe an extra thing, perhaps a TV, maybe an extra thing, perhaps maybe, beautiful decorations in the household. Well, now you can consider you've got extra money right there, but you want to make sure to also keep enough for those times that might go wrong. In other words, then it's your responsibility to calculate, okay, how much is enough if things go wrong? How much should I put in savings? How much should I put in, let's say, donation? How much should I put in maintenance and so forth? And what is my priority? So that's basically learning that money management from the Islamic lens and from the Islamic perspective, which is understanding the necessity slash darurat to التحسينات الحاجيات. Sorry, I keep on confusing them. الحاجيات are those the needs. Okay, التحسينات are basically the wants. Okay, I keep saying the other one first. Okay, so الحاجيات are the things that you need. Okay, so now you say, do I have enough money to cover this? If I do that, I can go for the following step. Okay, now in Islam in general, in Tazkiyah, they will actually speak about reducing from the tahsinat as basically being better for you, for your deen, because with it, if you add more of those tahsinat, so think of snacks and not necessarily the main foods, think of probably dining out instead of making your own food at home, think of probably, I don't know, having all that extra plus things, very expensive perfumes, expensive outfits, name brands, and all of that stuff. In Tezkiah, they would always advise you to reduce from that as a way or as a method to help you grow in your Tezkiah. But, I would add on to that. It's not just to help you grow on in your tezkiah, but it's also to help you grow in your focus because earning these things of tahsinat is going to be at the expense of your focus on items that are probably hajiyat in terms of maybe the children's of akhlaq, maybe the ird, the nafs, etc. All of these different things, they're going to consume time, they're going to consume money, they're going to consume effort in what you're probably trying to grow because you would be focused on that I've got enough time to look at those things, and then you end up probably spending more time in shopping, spending more time, and these things also become a distraction even within the household. So if you have too many things hung on your walls probably, or you have too many things that are in your household, these things would act as a distraction from your focus because they would be different data that your brain is basically piling up. And that's why you see people in Shanqit, for example, because they really have nothing but the desert. That's why their memory is definitely magnificent, outstanding, miraculous because their brains are basically just an empty sheet of paper because they don't have anything around them. No electricity, even no, barely anything. And even water is, I'm not definitely do not reduce on clean water because definitely it's going to be at the expense of your health. Do not reduce on that. That's a darura. So please do not think that you need to reduce from water in order to be a better Muslim. Okay? Please do not reduce on that. All right? But, in general, let's say reducing from the tahsinat. Let's work on that end. If you're able to reduce from certain darurat, maybe, yeah, I'll, have a stove, but no need for a microwave or no need perhaps for other things. Well, that's probably a good thing. But of course, it doesn't make it haram. Not at all. It's just a way that scholars in Tazkiyah would use that as a recommended way to grow in your deen, to grow in your focus, to grow in your, let's say, consideration of what you regard as in terms of dunya, as in terms of dunya. As in terms of dunya, and that way you would connect with the akhirah. So you don't focus on expanding your dunya, but you focus on expanding your akhirah by reducing your dunya. By reducing your dunya, you will realize that you're expanding your akhirah, and basically that being a priority. So now we see, in terms of house as well. Any questions about those? So we talked about, let's see, hold on, let's go zoom out again. So maintaining the husband, we talked about the children in details, and we talked about the house. And just with a simple rule, remember that DNAIM? with just that simple rule and understanding that priority, you put that and apply it within your household. You teach your children that DNAIM rule. Trust me, it's going to be a lifesaver for you. It's going to be that rule that you see through that lens. You think of it, as the prism, and then through that prism, how do I make my house, be that beam of light? Well, remember the primary colors? That's that primary color. Those are the primary colors, the five primary colors at least. Okay, in Islam, it's not like the red, the orange, yellow, green, etc. The primary colors being, those are five primary colors in Islam, letting us know that those are the keys to understanding basically the priorities within your life is also, you put it on the wrong temperature. Is basically key to helping us understand. Okay, let me tell you what happened. So my daughter I had chocolate chip cookies, butter in the freezer. And then she baked them, but she put it on grill instead of baking. So the chocolate chip cookies are really moist on the inside, but on the outside, they look very attractive. So right now, she's sitting next to me eating these chocolate chip cookies that are really moist on the inside and looking really, really yummy on the outside. So, ladies, sorry, that's a distraction. So, meanwhile, while I'm distracted, so if there are any questions, go ahead. I'm just going to put, you know what? I'm
You
going to
are
put that
playing
up
with
again.
our temptation.
Exactly. They
Oh,
look really moist really moist on the inside, but really crunchy on the outside. And you know what? I think I'm gonna start using the grill instead of the baking option for
yummy.
making the cookies.
Uh-huh.
Okay, any questions and or even suggestions or even ideas or even tips, sisters, you could be married and you might say, here's a tip that helped me in marriage. Here's what I would like to share. Here's something that I would like to add. Maybe we've got some marriage counselors as well to probably give me some ideas or probably share it, for those on YouTube, share certain important ideas or maybe lectures or even maybe links to different websites that you think are important to help those sisters, or even those brothers, if there are any listening to me, to help them basically with their marriage. So I would love to hear it. Somebody unmuted themselves, so go ahead, my friends. That'll give me some more time to eat my cookie. They
Shaking,
definitely don't want me to eat the cookie, huh?
shaking. Wala na.
Okay, this is a fitna right there. Is this tahsinat or is this darurat? I think it's darurat. What do you think? All right, everybody, enough about the darurat right there. And let's go ahead with the second segment since nobody wants to add something.
You
Okay,
don't have to
Sister
do.
Umay, you
I,
want to add something, dear?
No,
no, I
just
wrote
one.
something in the chat.
Oh, you did? Oh, you did? Okay, hold on. Let me see it. Oh, here we go. Mother's advice, always don't share your income. Don't share your income with your husband, but then husbands want to know. Is this you giving advice or is this
No, I'm saying like there's like conflicted advice, The
conflicted advice? Okay.
like the elder mothers will tell you, your money don't share like your savings. And
You know,
then,
okay. I'll tell you one thing is that when we speak about certain advice, should we share the income? Should we not share the income? I would say before you make that decision, I want you to first observe, is this a person of is this a person of honesty? Is this a person that is really contributing and supporting you? Or are you seeing that this person is selfish? If this person is showing signs of being selfish, then I would say, I don't know where this is going. Then I would recommend do not share your money entirely with your husband, because this may not give, let's say that may not be the sign where it's probably taking you to the right end. So I would say before you share everything in terms of money and joint income and all of that, I would really recommend studying this person first and seeing whether they are one, the part about, when they describe all of that, a narcissist, etc. Definitely there are narcissists out there. Definitely there are people that will take all the good things of you, and they expect you to be their slaves basically, and don't want to contribute anything, but they want to take your money, they want to take your effort, they want to take your energy, they want to take everything from you. And once you are left with nothing, that's when they will throw you and will then abuse you and forget all the contribution. This is an evil person. You want to be you want to be aware and see these red markers and red flags before you come in, and you then put in that money. And then they would be coming in and say, well, yeah, that money that you gave me is basically mine because it's to be spent on the household. And then they might just walk away and basically just leave you once you probably are older, or once you probably are not ready or not able to probably get a job and all of that. And then you realize that, oh, he didn't just take my life, but he even took my wealth, and now I'm really left with nothing. So I wouldn't necessarily, say give your money, but I also would not necessarily say do not give your money, because, it depends on the circumstance. This is what I would say. I had seen women that participated and had given and their income as a joint income, both contributed within the household. This is the most ideal, because husband, wife, and children, it's like we're both contributing together. And money is the cheapest thing, but it can be the most valuable things, or the most valuable thing at times, because it can maintain, it can mean your karama. It can mean it can mean your own dignity. If I don't have enough money to give myself proper maintenance, to give myself proper in a decent place to be in, clothing, food, whatever it is, and I don't have the money for it, well, this is right there going to then perhaps make me have no option but to ask it from others. And when you start asking it from others, you had just become a doormat. You had just become a doormat. Your dignity is then taken away without you realizing, right before your eyes. So I would say, the most ideal is being, as a joint income with your husband. That's the most ideal. But if you're seeing red flags of a person that is a narcissist, if he's a narcissist with his mother and sisters, he's going to be a narcissist with you, because guess what? It's basically a mindset. Narcissism is a mindset. And if that mindset, it had been basically their way of dealing with their sisters, their mothers, their brothers, the co-workers, guess what? You're not going to be any different. It's going to be the same mindset. Just like when we talk about mindset of Dean, there's also a mindset of this person that is evil, this person that will abuse you, and they'll appear really charming. they'll appear really charming, have the nicest words, and they'll appear like they're at your service until the moment comes when they basically had taken everything of you, and that's when they play the victim, and that's when everything changes in order for them to give themselves the justification to not feel guilty, justification to take everything. So you really want to be careful with that. So I would say before you go into living your imagination that this is an ideal relationship, I want you to consider at least in the beginning, perhaps, well, this is how much I want to contribute. This is for myself. Once you are ready and you really had lived with this person a couple years to really test their integrity, to really test their amana, to really test their commitment, then you can probably make the decision and say, you know what, I'm going to make this full joint income, and we're together in this mission. We're together to contributing together. You are my soul, you are myself, you are everything that I want to contribute in. You are basically my investment. Okay, that's when you really had seen the person's integrity. But if not, and this person is having some kind of history and showing red flags of probably maybe, in a couple years, trying to probably withdraw or probably abuse or etc., then I would say save yourself something on a side. You never know what happens if something basically does not go in your favor, does not go in your interest. You definitely want something maintained to help you, especially if you don't have family. You probably don't have something that may give you the maintenance. Make sure you also look ahead before you end up basically with nothing. Certainly, I would say money is the cheapest thing out there, but sometimes it can mean your karama, because your karama, your dignity, is your honor is the most valuable. That's basically your deen right there. But at the same time, don't give up on your karama, which can mean money, okay, right away before you really see that, yes, this is worth my commitment. This is worth my investment. So I would not necessarily say, put your income wholeheartedly every in that investment. And I would not say do not. I would say depends on the circumstances. Depends on the circumstances, depends on the person, depends on what red flags perhaps are out there. But it's usually, look, pay attention to this one. It is usually a lot easier to put the boundaries in the beginning than actually put the boundaries in the end, because they had gotten used to being within that territory. It's going to require fighting to take them back out of or at least back in a certain territory. It's going to require fighting, but it's going to require less fighting if from the start I'm saying, hey, I need, let's say, 1/3 of my income just for my personal use, or I don't want to invest that within the household. It just makes me feel at rest. It makes me feel maintained in whatever it is. Now, I personally do not recommend working outside of home. This is my personal experience, because working outside of home, especially if you're a full-time job, especially if you have children, it will definitely wear you out. But again, people have different capacities, and I think it's very important to give people their own spaces of how they want to organize their relationship, what to them is a priority, but definitely it's going to wear you out. In the beginning, it might feel like I can do this, and yes, it was always my dream to get this job, to get that job. If you needed to get a job, I would say get a part-time job, but not a full-time job if you needed to get a job, unless you really have to. And before you even get into college, my recommendation is, think ahead. Think ahead and try to seek jobs where working from home is possible. It's better for your dean. It's better for maintaining your home, for maintaining your children, for maintaining your family. And certainly as a woman, you basically are centered around your social dynamic, around your children, around your husband. This is considered your fortress. So if you're able to, yes, get a side job and at the same time work from home, and especially after COVID, this became something that is available a lot more than before. So if you're able to probably get a degree where you're working from home and also making a good income. I know a sister that was making almost $5,000 a month just working from home, and she was doing something called, was it information data or something? I forgot what that field was called, but it was something like that, where she would basically she would work for a hospital, get that information, and just basically get it into the system basically, and call insurance companies. All of that is done from home, and was making a very good amount of money just working from home. So if you can get into seeing, okay, what kind of jobs can be from home, perhaps maybe certain jobs maybe in the beginning that you have to work maybe in the field, and perhaps later on, if you are, let's say, a nurse practitioner, maybe you're working from home, maybe answering phone calls, etc., as a nurse that is on call over the phone and not necessarily being, within the inpatient clinics, etc. Those are different ideas, but definitely, see what other options you might be basically having to work from home. And definitely that is my recommended thing for a number of different reasons. Number one, it's better for your dean to be away from intermingling with men. That's number one. Number two, it's better, and studies are actually showing that women who stay at home, although have a 16% chance of developing depression, but they would have, on the other hand, a 37% chance developing depression by going outside. All right, so you're basically going 16 or 37. What are we looking at right there? Well, the 16%, hey, I can probably walk outside to cut down on this, isolated in the home, or probably, meet up with my girlfriends, with my other, relatives or what, etc. That way I won't be completely isolated, but I would basically be happier at home, because remember, even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنْ. Even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنْ, even though this ayah was really directed at the Prophet ﷺ's wives, but all the mufassirin said, whether it's waqirna or waqarna, and you look at these two words, if you are to say waqirna, it would be different than waqarna. What's the difference? Il-qarna actually means to have honor. Your home is your honor. Once you go outside of your home, you basically become more susceptible to losing your honor because other men are basically getting used to seeing you, and intermingling is becoming, let's say, more frequent and more available. And when you look at waqirna, il-qirna, it basically would mean that that's what would give you stability. Okay? Qirna would mean it gives you stability. And those are two qira'at. Those are two qira'at. Qarna and qirna fi buyutikun. It's quite interesting. So, in other words, when you're looking at qirna fi buyutikun or waqarna fi buyutikun, we could definitely see studies right now supporting the idea that certainly stay-at-home moms or women that are working from home, they basically have one, better mental health, less depression, and certainly when we're speaking about better mental health, we're actually talking about better mental health not only for the moms, but we're talking about better mental health for the children as well. Studies actually say 64% of the children that are put in daycares have a high level of cortisol and show basically signs of depression, signs of as anxiety, and different things that also will develop in behavioral problems. And certainly, we're talking about different problems that later on had shown to affect the children's education, affect the children's behavior, affect the children's future success, etc., and even have a higher rate of these children becoming basically addicts or probably criminals, etc. This is not to say everybody. This isn't to say, it depends on who's actually, maintaining the children and how many kids are in the daycare. I ran a daycare before for 7 years. Okay. And I'll tell you, it really depends on the children and who's maintaining them. And at the same time, even if you were like a mother to the child, and I still have some relationships with some of the kids that were in my daycare, they'll always just feel and remember that I was like a mother to them because their mother would leave them from around 6 a.m. till 6 p.m. So that's 12 hours a day. They go home and they just go for sleeping. Okay. So to them, I'm like their mother. All right. But at the same time, there were children, no matter how much love and how much affection you were to give that child, nothing goes beyond motherly love. Nothing can beat motherly love. Nothing can beat your own mama. Nothing. No matter how affectionate that daycare provider was, no matter how nice, no matter how giving, a mother is different. A mother is different. It's a different energy. It's a different soul. It's basically a different DNA. Your mother is basically that heartbeat that you heard even before you were out in the world. Your mother's heartbeat, it basically vibrates to give you that heartbeat within your own self. There's nothing like a mother. So for those mommies, I know that not everyone is capable of basically, working from home, but I would say plan ahead. It is part of avoiding all the challenges that may come ahead. This is important. So for your daughters, teach them before you choose the degree that you want to study, before you choose perhaps the job, choose something that can align with you being a mother, with you being a wife, something to help you basically do two things, which is maintaining your home, maintaining your mental health, maintaining your kids' mental health, because that's going to be your priority down the road. So before you put in all these dreams and, right now think of life that you are right now in, I don't have a responsibility, I don't have kids, I don't have this, I think outside of the box. I want you to remember that down the road, you're going to be a mother. Down the road, you're going to be a wife. Down the road, you're going to have a priority called your house, called your husband, called your children. And that's going to take, let's say, 90% of your time. It's going to take 90% of your time. And if it's going to take 90% of your time, you want to make sure that with those 10% of the time that you want to probably maintain for yourself, that it's not spent on the road and it doesn't become that 10% of your time or 30% of your time is with your children and 70% of your time is probably at work, because this is an imbalance. This is an imbalance. It's going to affect your mental health. It's going to affect your children's mental health. It's going to affect the relationship between you and your husband. For sure. It's going to affect the relationship. Because if you come in pretty much at the same time, you leave from work at 5, he leaves from work at 5, and then you're both coming in and he's like ready, wanting to be home, but you're like throwing yourself, you're like, I'm ready to rest. What happened? All your energy was put at work in other people's service. Now you're completely depleted of energy. You're completely empty of energy to do anything for your children, for yourself, or even for your husband. And then it becomes not a household, a house for being a home. Now it became a place where I'm just basically depleted of energy. I'm basically then dead and dropping dead, trying to find a place to just somehow revive my energy for a second day of work tomorrow. And we've got a problem. We really then have a problem. And that's the system that feminism wanted to get women in. It was based on the premise that, hey, ladies, you need to compete in the capitalist, basically, market. You need to make money, and you are worth the money that you make. The money that you make is going to give you the dignity. And then once we're focused on that, then we're basically contradicting and we're clashing with what Islam considered a priority. Islam considered your priority is basically the value of what you invest within the household, whether it's being a mother. And that's why, Islam talked about the value of a mother. The value of the mother was actually the second value after Tawheed. The second value after Tawheed. The value of what you invest is more than what any price or any dollar sign can be put. Definitely when you're looking at that investing for the akhirah, but this is not definitely at the expense of your health, not at the expense of your mental health, and certainly not at the expense of your deen. But this is basically to help us just not get carried away with this whole pressure, the feminist pressure to get us out into the market and forget the priority that Islam wanted us to contribute in making an ummah. The best contribution that you can do in making an ummah is making children with good deen, your husband with good deen, you with good deen. That's the best investment. Money can come and go, but the best investment is the investment where we pave our path to go to Jannah. That's the most important thing. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. ما أريد منهم من رزق وما أريد أن يطعمون. When did he say that? He said, وما خلقت الجن والإنس إلا ليعبدون. ما أريد منهم من رزق وما أريد أن يطعمون. So I only created you to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Both the ins and the jinn, the humans and the jinn. ما أريد منهم من رزق. I'm not asking you to make money. In other words, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us, be careful from thinking that all your energy is supposed to be basically just put in the area of making money and developing a certain amount of enhancing this area of number, but you need to prioritize another number, the number of value to go to Jannah. That's the key thing. That's the key thing. And we have to be always careful with the feminist agenda that's basically trying to convince us that your value, your competition, and your husband is basically in the feminist agenda. The rhetoric is basically from Simone de Beauvoir to others. It's always telling them, hey, there would be telling them, hey, marriage is basically your cage. Marriage is your cage. Do not get yourself into that. In fact, Simone de Beauvoir even considers that a woman that is a prostitute is actually more successful than a mother and a wife. Just imagine. Why? Because she considers that, hey, she's making money. Just imagine. Just imagine. And right now we're seeing this imposed on us, these philosophies, these ideas, these agendas are right now imposed upon Muslim nations and upon all nations. Right now, we're talking about majority of the countries that actually signed what is called the CEDAW agreement, CEDAW, and that is actually imposed by the UN. So we really need to be aware of what rhetoric is out there. We need to be aware of what is shaping our priorities, who's considering our future, and what is considering our future. And Islam basically has its own vision, has its own pavement, and we have to consider that as a priority that is for our mental health and certainly for our own security, for our children's security, and for the rise of the ummah. Think of that, for the rise of the ummah. You won't be able to rise the ummah until you actually recognize the contribution that matters the most about you. Let's see, the sister is saying, but what if you discover they're a narcissist and you've been in a marriage for years and see no change happening, even though all signs from Allah are telling you to leave, but you fear the step? Dear, I would be careful with making a self-diagnose and considering that yes, this person is a narcissist and I know it, etc. But especially now, and the algorithms that we with the phones, with social media, all of that, many times if I were to tell you and you keep on seeing red, let's say it that way, let's just make this experiment, and I put something red in front of you, and I put red light in front of you, red, 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 everything is red, and then I take out the red and let you just see normally, your eyes are really going to see red for some time, for almost a minute. Okay. And that's the same thing. You want to be careful in making those self-diagnose and say he's a narcissist. But I would just say red flags, and I would say be careful from all of those let's call it self-diagnose, okay? Because at many times, it becomes, it's not just the red color. Same thing if I were to, give you a description of perhaps maybe a certain illness, and you're basically hearing about this illness. That's why those that would study medical studies, the first year, many of them get sick because they're like, oh my God, I have that symptom, and that one, I have that symptom, and then they get into this paranoia. So sometimes, especially with these algorithms, you can fall in seeing, yes, my husband has that, my husband has that. Oh my God, that's it, that's a narcissist. I want you to be careful because there are a lot of times descriptions that may be just a normal description of what makes a man or what makes us. We all have some level of shuh. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called it shuh. In other words, we are all somehow, to a certain level, really wanting to maintain our own interests. We are somehow, to a certain level, selfish and consider our own pains first before we consider others. We consider ourselves or our own comfort before we consider other people's comfort. That's basically all of us. Okay. But if we hurry in basically, I would say, diagnosing, or we rush and start seeing them as narcissists and therefore untradeable, then we may be doing a self-diagnose and then prescribing our own medication. And because we just did our own self-diagnose, and if you do your own self-diagnose and you prescribe your own medication, not unless you are a specialist, that's a different story. Okay, that's a different story. But I would say, be careful from doing, that self-prescription or self-diagnose and doing all of that, because many times it can be paranoid. So I don't know if that is true. If let's just suppose that he really is a narcissist, and that this person is going to be like that. Remember, this is a mindset. Okay, this is a mindset. And in fact, there are quite interesting studies telling us that narcissist is not just a mindset in character, but it is truly a mindset in the brain. A mindset in the brain. They could actually scan it. Okay, it's really interesting studies. Follow Daniel Amen, Amen, Daniel Amen. Very, very smart. He's a psychiatrist and also had done a lot of studies on neuroscience and a lot of scans, over 250,000 scans, just something that really interesting to learn from. Okay, so when we look at that, and let's just assume that he really is a narcissist, I would not necessarily say, listen, this person is never going to change, therefore jump out of the wagon. I would say you have to learn how to work out first. See, is this something that you can maneuver? Is there a way to work with this person? Is there a way to maintain yourself in case when it is time for you to leave, that you have a ground for money, you have a ground for shelter, you have a ground at least basis to back you up in case when you discover that's it, it's time for me to leave now because I had been patient enough for the children's sake, but now this is becoming too toxic, too dangerous, even for the children's security or for the children's mental health and for the children and for mine as well. Time for me to leave. Then in that situation, I would say before you do that, make sure you have at least that maintenance to help you move forward. Let's say it that way. Because especially during our times, okay, your family is not the way that it used to be before. If it is, well, good for you. But most of the times, the expenses are extremely expensive. And it's not easy to, perhaps maybe your father's probably in his 60s, living on his own retirement. So now expecting him to now take care of you. And until, of course, this narcissist husband is probably going to play the game in courts and probably play the game to not pay child support, then you're really right there struggling, waiting for perhaps your father or your brothers to help you and giving the maintenance for the children, maintenance for then in that situation, you want to basically just plan ahead before you jump out of the boat. You never jump out of the boat in the middle of the ocean and expect to somehow swim to somehow, have an island just pop up in the middle of the ocean. It doesn't work like that. You don't jump out of the ocean unless you have a security boat or at least an emergency boat at hand with certain, I guess, maybe food or probably, I don't know, a first aid kit or whatever it is to help you till you go nearby to a healthy and a safe place. But you never jump out of the boat where at least you're considered floating and go jump into the ocean and think that, yeah, somehow there's going to be an island that's going to help me somehow, be safe. You want to make sure you have one, certain priorities during our times, transportation, and certainly we're talking about an amount of money to help you basically be in a shelter. And number three, basically communication. We're talking about phone, we're talking about internet, we're talking about that. Those are key things to help you in those times where it is necessary to jump off the boat. You need, hey, signal communication, you need transportation, and you need a shelter. Those three things. If you don't have enough money to get these, and certainly transportation, car, commute and all of that, that's actually necessary to help you basically land safely outside of this relationship that's probably now becoming extremely dangerous if we're talking about it basically dangerous if we're assuming that. Okay, the other sister is basically saying, is it permissible for women to work outside of home in Islam as working in an office, shopping, or being a teacher? So yes, dear, it is permissible to work outside of the home if there's no intermingling and if she basically is maintaining her hijab. Definitely, that is in times of necessity, that you would be permitted to work in areas that have, men around or intermingling. But in general, find a place where it's all women to reduce the amount of intermingling, and only in a case of necessity. There was no other job to accept me except this job. I'll do my homework in maintaining my deen, maintaining distance from the guys, etc. But I'll tell you, ladies, it is extremely hard when this is your coworker. This is somebody that you, especially if you're in an extroverted personality, you're going to find yourself basically not realizing those parameters, those borders, and without you realizing, you normalize that ikhtilat. You normalize that ikhtilat. You become so used to it that it becomes something that, I mean, what's wrong with it? So you'll see those women laughing with those guys, chatting with them like they're their own brothers and all of that. And that's definitely not what Islam wanted. That's definitely not the parameter of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had said, فَلَا تَخْضَعْنَ بِالْقَوْلِ فَيَطْمَعَ الَّذِي فِي قَلْبِهِ مَرَض. Do not speak in that. الخضوع بالقول basically involves one, speaking in ways that are lenient in voice, flirtish, flirting with your voice, or probably even going to another farther step and just normalizing just conversation. Yeah, we're talking about our daily life. I'm talking about this, and who's this? Oh, it's my coworker. Meet Flynn. And it's like, oh, excuse me, what are you doing with him? We're chatting about just different things, no, that's not permissible. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقُلْنَا قَوْلًا مَعْرُوفًا. It's going to be limited. Ma'ruf. Just say, sir, here are the files all set, emailing him the files, and that's it, but not going beyond that. Because then you are going beyond the limits that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had regarded. So if you want to be a teacher, whether you are teaching boys, I would definitely not recommend teaching boys, because at the end, they will recognize that you are a woman. I'm talking about boys. We're talking about, teenage boys. We're talking about boys that reach the age of puberty because they're not a mahram anymore. But in cases that You basically were teaching these boys, you want to remember the parameters that even if these boys are fit and young enough to basically be like your own children, you're still going to remember that they're not your mahram. Okay, they had reached the age of puberty, and this takes me back to Usama ibn Zayd. Was it Usama ibn Zayd? Was it? I think it was Usama ibn Zayd. Yeah. So Usama ibn Zayd, he was this young boy who was the son of Zayd ibn Haritha. Zayd ibn Haritha was the Prophet's adopted son, and Usama was his son. Okay. And Zayd ibn Haritha, because he was the Prophet's adopted son, the wives of the Prophet, and they were treating Usama ibn Zayd like he was their grandson. They were treating him like he was their own. But once Usama ibn Zayd, he went to the Prophet ﷺ and explained to him what he had seen in dreams that had become more frequently. That's when the Prophet ﷺ had said and explained to him that that's a sign of that you just entered the age of puberty. This is what it means. Now you have to keep certain distances. Now you have to do certain things. And then he told his wives, Usama cannot now anymore enter the home freely or even be around you anymore like he used to because he had hit the age of puberty. He started crying because they would play with his hair, they would treat him like he was their own son, and he started crying because he now, is transitioning from all of the sudden from a child of their own to right now a stranger. He started crying. They started crying. It's like, oh my God, what do you mean a transition in the relationship? This is like my own son. But that's it. That's a parameter that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had put, and we have to understand that. And that's the same thing when you're talking about perhaps maybe being a teacher, even if those boys, 15-year-old boys, they're probably old enough to be your children, you still have to remember that there has to be that parameter that if they reach the age of puberty, that they're not your mahram. Let's see, the other question is, can a teenager still in high school get a simple job like working at Walmart or a clothing shop for college or a car? Is it permissible? I would definitely say it's something that I would encourage, not for girls necessarily, but for boys, because that basically, for boys, it teaches them how to create communication skills. This is extremely important. When boys, especially boys, when they start working outside of the home, they start getting a job, they start getting responsibilities, they start getting orders from right now their boss, and right now they're going to understand what it means to be responsible, what it means to get a job, what it means to maintain a household, what it means that what my parents had were always spending on me, the privilege. But one thing I would say, let them understand that you're going to take care of their money. So even if it's an income they generated, if they're teenagers, you take their income. Not take their income to mean for you, but you maintain their income and basically keep it for them and say, I'll keep it and I'll take care of it because that's going to be helping you invest it. If let's say they wanted to buy something, what are you going to buy? And is this within your financial management? Is this within your financial capacity? And even charge them for probably rent if they're working, charge them for expenses, different expenses. Why? Because this is to help them recognize how to manage their money. I know you may not need this money, but taking this deducting this amount of money is teaching them how to prioritize and do money management within their life. It's teaching them, okay, this is how much you're spending on transportation. This is how much you're spending on, for example, rent. This is how much, is it worthy? Hey, if you're going to move out, this is how much it's going to cost you. This is the amount of income you're making. Is this worth it? Now you're saving money by living with your parents because you're basically paying probably $200 a month. Compare it to if you were to move out, probably paying, if you were maybe with a group of guys, you're going to be probably paying maybe $400 or $500 a month. Now you're paying 200. Don't you think it's a lot cheaper? It's better for maybe give those boys even, maybe an investment. Tell them, hey, you're going to invest. Maybe get married at age 19 or age 20. Why not? It's going to help you for your dean, but not until you learn how to get a job and you learn how to invest. Maybe invest towards your college tuition. How do you do that? So definitely boys, absolutely not for girls, unless for girls it's an all girls area. I absolutely and completely disagree with girls working in places like Walmart or places as intermingling is available, because remember, there are those guys that just enjoy being around these young, beautiful girls, and girls that many times, they're looking for social acceptance, and that social acceptance, they will get it from those strange men, from those strangers, and many men are right now predators feeding on these young teenage girls. So I would really advise against it. And I would say, find a place where it would be perhaps maybe if these girls want to get a job, an all women area, and perhaps maybe from home, etc. That would definitely be better than working in a place that has intermingling, and definitely going to increase the chances of fitna, because many guys, even if you're a hijabi, even if mashallah, I know my daughter, she's a great girl in her deen, etc. But you know your daughter, but you know that you've got many out there that feed on being predators to those girls. So your duty as a parent is to provide the security for the girl, to provide the maintenance for the girl. But for the boys, it's a completely different relationship. For the girls, you've got a bigger responsibility to maintain them. For the boys, your duty as a parent is to give them direction, to give them empowerment, to give them basically the resources to go on their own, because they're going to grow to become men, and he needs to learn how to get a job even from his early childhood, learn how to communicate, learn how to speak with strangers, learn how to analyze different people's attitudes and work under pressure, etc., but not wait until they graduate from college to get a job. I would definitely advise against waiting till they graduate, because the things that they learn from basically being out there, unless it's dangerous for the teenage boys, my recommendation, especially in the US, my recommendation, do not give them at least the ability to drive yet, not until they show signs of maturity. Not until they show the signs of maturity, to basically give them the ability to drive, and basically the car keys, etc. Not until they show signs of maturity. Things like transportation, things like money, things like a bigger space and more freedom in terms of going and coming. Know when they're coming. When are they going? How much time are they spending at work? Where's the income? What are they doing? What kind of a job is it? Your job as a parent to mentor them, to make sure that this is going to channel what you had wanted it to basically go towards, which is one, perhaps their akhlaq, letting them learn the different methods for communication, letting them learn the different things that basically would benefit them in their life, and not something that will become just a tool against their own interests. So we have to be really careful. And, that's a different level of how we can give instruction and also direction, and not necessarily put in all that space and say, yeah, you're gonna get a car and basically their phone and all of those different things. And then this child, remember, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala basically in Surah An-Nisa, when he said, فَإِنْ آنَسْتُم مِّنْهُمْ رُشْدًا فَدِفَعُوا إِلَيْهِمْ أَمْوَالَهُم. Once they reach the age of rushd, فَإِنْ آنَسْتُم مِّنْهُمْ رُشْدًا. And if we're talking about money, remember the DNAIM rule. And that's the same thing. The DNAIM rule is also there. The M, which is the mal, that's going to be the last priority. If money, we're not going to give them access to their own money, not until they show signs of maturity. How is it with giving them transportation, with more space? How is it with giving them time? If they cannot maintain their chastity yet, I need to make sure that they're capable of maintaining their chastity. And certainly, when we're speaking about, for example, girls, if I'm putting, Mel, that, yeah, I want her to be able to get a job, but I'm putting her ird at risk. Now you're confusing the DNAIM, because ird comes way more important. And prior, let's go back to our chart right there. The ird is basically right there, coming even way before the man. Here's the ird. It's more important than man. So keeping my daughter in a place of security is more important than her getting a job. Same thing if we're talking about boys. If I'm not giving them the money to basically be under their control, even though it's their money. Yes, فَإِنْ آنَسْتُم مِّنْهُمْ رُشْدًا فَدَفَعُوا إِلَيْهِمْ أَمْوَالَهُم. If I'm not giving them the money, same thing. I can't give them the territory in spaces that may obstruct the stability within their earth. I can't give them the spaces to probably put their life at risk yet. Not until they show me signs of maturity. Am I going to give them a car, or probably means to use that money to probably rent a car, or probably, I don't know, buy a car, whatever? Because transportation is, once that transportation is there, guess what? It's going to reduce from your authority and your power to control their ability to channel these resources to be in their benefit. They might channel it in a wrong direction. If they have the transportation, they have the means of communication, they have the money, then what happens? They might actually use it for the wrong things. And that's what I had seen many teenagers basically do. They've got the transportation, they've got the communication phone with them, and social media and all of that, and they have the money. What happened? Well, they channeled it toward the wrong direction, basically went into drugs, basically went into gains, went into all these different areas of haram, zina, etc. What happened? Well, even if you were to tell your son, you can't go out, you can't come in, he's got the car keys. What are you talking about? He's capable of driving. Now you can't control him going out and coming in anymore. He's got a phone. Now you can't control when you tell him not to talk to this friend or that friend because they're basically drug dealers. He's got the phone with him. Then you can't control that. And he's got the money. Now you don't really have any power anymore. So when you were talking about these three things, it's very important to not just do this control, but I would say to educate them. Why am I doing this? I'm not doing it to control you for my benefit. I'm doing it to help channel you towards what benefits you, what is in your interest. That's the only reason. The money, here it is. I'm keeping it for you, but not until I see signs of maturity. Am I going to give you that money? Not until I see signs of maturity. Am I going to give you perhaps the ability to go driving, permit, get your permit, driving license, whatever it is, and probably even buy you a car myself, or probably even give you a phone, etc. Not until right now. Start with a flip phone. Because the second that you give them that iPhone, then yep, that's a different world. You can't even control anymore of what they're going to be seeing. And that's how we got many teenagers addicted to pornography, addicted to social media, addicted to all these different things when they basically got so addicted to these things that it was impossible to take it away from them. It was impossible to take it away from them. So what we need to do is be aware of their weaknesses. They are way they are way more susceptible to addiction than an adult. Way more susceptible to addiction. A teenager, way more susceptible to addiction. And this is important to keep in mind. If they're going to be then getting into addiction, probably social media, or probably maybe having the freedom to go out and come whenever they want, or probably meet their friends or go out with these friends and get all that dopamine from the friends and all that hangout, and probably maybe it feels good to have some level of autonomy and money and all of that, gives them freedom, then guess what? That becomes an addiction. Now they don't want your mentorship anymore. Now they will tell you, I have my vision, I have my freedom, I have my own autonomy. You can't tell me where to go. You can't tell me what to look at. You can't tell me how to spend my money, etc. Now this is a kafir mindset. Well, that's a society. That's the culture that we're living in today. It's a kafir mindset. Who are you, mom, to tell me this and that? Who are you, dad, to tell me this and that? That's a kafir mindset. In Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lets us know that your parents, even if you may disagree with them, that they basically are there to help you channel those potentials and those powers and energy that you probably have, to channel it towards your own success. And that's why that's why the ayah in Surah Al-Ahqaf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, حتى إذا بلغ أشده وبلغ 40 سنة قال ربي أوزعني أن أشكر نعمتك التي أنعمت علي وأن أعمل صالحا ترضاه. Yeah, certainly that's when they reach the age of that's when they reach the age of 40. Will they really recognize that my parents were really trying to invest in me? My parents were really trying to make a difference in my life. I didn't recognize it. They won't really recognize it until they're 40. But at least to get that maturity, what is maturity? Remember the maturity in the ayah. اعلموا أن فيكم رسول الله يطيعكم في كثير من الأمر لعنتم ولكن الله حبب إليكم الإيمان. Once Iman is there, founded in their hearts, زينه في قلوبكم, it's beautified in their hearts, كره إليكم الكفر والفسوق والعصيان, and made kufr, disbelief, made major sin and minor sin as something that you don't want to engage in. That becomes as a discipline. It's not enough to educate the child and talk to them about it. In theory, they'll give you these beautiful lectures. But in discipline, that's a different level. That's a different level. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الرَّاشِدُونَ فَضْلًا مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَنِعْمَةً. This is extremely important to keep in mind when we are dealing with children and when we're organizing those priorities, to learn also from other people's mistakes and how they had lost their children. As somebody that basically had went through a lot of cases in America, I'll tell you those things. Since the sister was asking, should they work, should they not get a job? I would say, depends And I would give these tips to make sure that you are basically controlling the situation and not them being in control and you end up, oh, I was trying to do the right thing. And we had seen that very often. Very, very often. Allah al-Musta'an. If there are any other questions, there are only 10 minutes left, but I really wanted to start with this one, but I guess I got carried away with the other things, the masculinity and femininehood. Yeah, I wouldn't want to start right now and basically stop in the middle because this is all a whole block of one point. So if there are any questions or if there are any suggestions, I would love to hear it. I would love to hear your experiences, your suggestions, and what you would like to, add. I'm sure many of you have a lot of great ideas that you would like to probably share, or maybe even stories, because within these 10 minutes, I don't want to start a new topic and not be able to finish it and finish those ideas. But inshallah, we'll do these next week, inshallah. And we're going to talk about later the fiqh of divorce. Remember, let me show you what we're going to be doing.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa
Assalamu
alaikum assalam. Go ahead, dear.
Okay, one question. Can women preach in front of non-mahram men? Teach
Like
or
read
preach?
Quran? Like read Quran?
Not read Quran, just dars, tadris, talim, like
So,
lecture, preach, like
fair
lecture.
enough.
Like, yeah,
So
yeah.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَلَا تَخْضَعْنَ بِالْقَوْلِ فَيَطْمَعَ الَّذِي فِي قَلْبِهِ مَرَضٌ وَقُلْنَا قَوْلًا مَعْرُوفًا. So when you
Okay.
say وَقُلْنَا قَوْلًا مَعْرُوفًا, all right,
Hmm?
so قول
Yes.
المعروف, giving a lecture, like right now, people, men and women, can actually hear the lectures and they could definitely, hear my voice. As long as this is قول معروف, there's no تكسر, there's no flirtation in it, and the voice is basically saying of good things, قول المعروف, and then in that situation, it would be permissible for the men to hear it and for her to even speak it. Okay, it would be permissible for her to speak it and permissible for them to hear it. The other thing I would say, there's definitely a difference between being in person and being online. Okay,
Hmm?
in person, at the end of the day, you are a woman, so you have to maintain certain adab, and certainly the older you are, I guess the closer you are to, I guess, it being permissible, okay? And the younger you are, the more perhaps I would say I want you to maintain distance. I want you to probably not be too much in public, because even if you are giving a dars deen, even if you are talking about Islam, if you are in perhaps a teenager or probably early 20s, etc., and or mid 20s, etc., it's completely different than when you are 40 and 50, completely different. And throughout history, we have had women that would teach behind a barrier or probably teach men, but they were the ones that were older. So they would be near قواعد من النساء. They would be older women and not younger women. But for the younger women, that wouldn't be on, let's say, on a daily basis, because it takes away a lot of that honor for that woman. If she's basically every single day, it becomes normalized for
Hmm?
that man to for those men, if she's every single day giving lectures to these group of men. This is my experience, not necessarily an Islamic ruling. The Islamic ruling is in general, okay, you got two
Hmm?
things. Number
Okay.
one, in the Islamic ruling, you got one side which is telling you, well, if you've got your adab, your akhlaq, your hijab, you're basically watching your voice. In other words, it's a not khudu' bil qawl, okay, and you're giving the lecture, etc., and you're with your hijab, all of that, you're maintaining distance, that it's permissible in general,
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
second addition, that which is called sadd al-dhari'a. Sadd al-dhari'a basically means blocking the means to evil. That's when,
Yes.
of course, you would speak about the other scholars that would have الحكم على الشيء فرع عن تصوره. That's what scholars would say. In order
Okay.
to know the ruling about something, you really have to see and study the dynamic of it and where this is going. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you my take. The male scholars can tell you their take on having a woman teaching them every day, but I'll tell you my take. I used to teach men, okay? And
Okay.
I've taught men for years. And let me say, I started teaching men at age 24, and I was
Okay.
not a hobby at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I was lecturing them. There were times, even though I'm a very serious woman, just like you could say, I'm a very serious woman when it comes to giving lectures and when men are present, a very
Mm-hmm.
serious woman. But when it's only women, you
Mm-hmm.
could see a completely different personality. But when
Okay.
men are around, I'm a very serious woman. There's no that type of, uh, you know, um,
Joke.
any type of I guess chatting and being in any way or shape or form,
Yeah.
but trying to maintain the adab. But still, I'll tell you, there were these approaches that let me know that guys were seeing me as a woman no matter how strong I acted.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
And uh, I'm a person that is really strict on her hijab. So it wasn't like I was wearing something that was attractive and no, no, no. It was a very, very, baggy clothes and, all of that. But I had certain comments that they saw the woman in me, no matter how strong I thought I had appeared. And no
Mm-hmm.
matter how well I tried to maintain my Islam, there were signs. They were telling me, I see the woman in you. Okay. Now that's
Yeah.
one thing. Maybe in my early 20s, it's a little different, but even later on, when I wore a niqab and I was married, etc., certainly there what I didn't give lectures at a regular basis to men on a regular basis, but I'll tell you once they see you regularly, and occasionally this time, that time, etc. They you could see that they tend to get closer and closer. I don't mean physically, but I mean closer and
Yeah.
closer
Yeah.
and wanting to
Yeah.
speak and
Yeah.
expand the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, that's that area that I'll tell you as a person that really was maintaining her hijab and was giving lectures for. And by the way, it wasn't just Muslim men. It was Muslim men. I was a lecturer at Swedish Theological Institute for non-Muslims, and I had given many lectures for non-Muslims, Muslims, Jews, Christians, and
Yeah.
to all faiths. And it's really the same. A man is a man. He's got the
Mm-hmm.
same
Right.
chemical thing that goes and runs in him,
Right.
whether he was a sheikh with a beard or whether he was a man wearing a cross. He's a man. When he sees you as a woman, he's going to basically develop the same chemicals, whether this man has a beard, is called a sheikh, is an imam, or whether he has a cross and wearing a cross, it's going to be the same. It's going to be the same chemistry.
And his
Mm-hmm.
shaitan will
Yes.
present himself.
Yeah.
Absolutely. He's
Yeah.
got the
Yes.
same chemistry.
A
Mm-hmm.
chance.
Whether it's a Christian, it's a Jew, it's a Muslim sheikh, it's a man. It runs the same blood. It runs the same nerves. It runs the same brain. It's the same thing. This one believes in
Yeah.
Allah and that one believes in Allah and that one believes in Islam. But that, hey, shaitan, يجري في عروق بني آدم مجرى الدم. That's it. It's
Mm,
the truth.
Right.
yes. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the truth.
The, yes. Yeah. It can
Well,
create fitna, right? Like, yeah. It's like,
Absolutely.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. That's why right now, I basically, chose to stay away from lecturing to men right now. Okay, the online, I guess there's no relationship. Okay, it's a completely different story, but I try to maintain as much as I can the akhlaqiyat, al-Islam, etc. But, I guess, I haven't, I've been doing this for a couple of years right now with online. Alhamdulillah, it's definitely not comparable at all with an in-person where people from both sexes listening to you, it's not the same at all. Not the same at all. There's definitely no crossing boundaries from men, not on social media, anything written, or even, somehow thinking that, I'll call her, contact her. Even those that wanted to contact, they knew that, you know what, I'm definitely not the right person for you. Because your voice tone, your adab, and the topics, and they don't see a picture, it gives a completely different dynamic, a completely
Yes.
different thing.
Okay.
That's
Jazakallah
my
khairan.
وإياكم وإياكم. That's my little experience. So this is it, inshallah. We'll see you all. Oh, let's see. Hold on. What is the definition of feminism? You know what? That's a very good question. Guess what? They don't even have a definition for it. They don't even have a definition for it. You know why? Because, and this is what I always say, they have different waves for feminism. Okay. And
Yeah.
the different waves, each one would campaign at a certain things or certain goals. And I would say all feminism is postmodern feminism, even though, other feminists would disagree and tell me, no, that's not true. And, you need to study it better, etc. You know what? Even when I studied it better, I came basically firmer in my belief that all feminism is postmodern feminism. And when I say postmodern feminism, it all comes with using rhetorical speech, not regarding a definition for truth, not regarding basically a definition for morality or a certain definition for feminism. If you don't have a certain definition for feminism, that's postmodern feminism right there. So that's, just letting us know what is out there. And I did give a lecture on postmodern feminism. So at lectures, actually, on postmodern feminism. And one of the most important lecture, which actually had some good feedback, even from non-Muslims, by the way. I've had non-Muslims actually contact me on this lecture, and it was called was it Scrutinizing Feminism? Let's see, feminism, and let's see. I'm gonna see it right there. Hold on, let me see. Yeah, there we go. So this lecture basically went in details with scrutinizing feminism and what it really is. Here we go. This is it. Postmodern feminism goes in details. It's an hour and 17 minutes. The one I gave yesterday was 2 hours, but it pretty much is within the same idea. In fact, they're the same slides. All right. So سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نستغفرك ونتوب إليك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت. Oh, Saida is basically there. Okay, so she's telling me equal rights for women. Okay, equal rights for women. That's feminism. Not necessarily, because you've got, the other feminists, they'll tell you, no, we're not looking for equal rights. They'll basically say we're campaigning for other rights. So, if you were to ask them, hey, should we have, for example, women um, be in the same field as men, basically, and in the Olympics, they'll tell you no. So they don't want equality there because they recognize that there are differences. So even the total equality, they're not looking for it, but they'll basically be selective in considering that women have certain weaknesses and then want to say, well, no, you want equal here, but I don't want equal there. And they recognize the differences, but then they want to turn a blind eye on certain things and then be selective in what the basically suits a privilege to give them, but don't want the price to pay for the privilege that is given to them. So yeah. Says Omaya, go ahead, dear.
Yeah, I want to say that I believe when you answer one of the sisters, when she asked about can the women work in a place that like Walmart, like
Right.
Walmart, يعني surrounded with many men or young employee, This what happened to me a couple days before. I was in Sam, and at the self-cashier checkout, I asked for help. One of them, like in 20s, he showed up and he came toward me and he tried to solve the problem, make chatting with me. We said it was in 30s the temperature, and he looked at my coat and start to يعني express his he liking this coat and this hijab, and he talked about if how nice to have such things in this cold weather. Then he tried to want to continue to open a topic more and more and more with me. I said, Subhanallah, between me and him, I'm older than him 50 years, 50. Then I said, I imagine after you said now about يعني woman is a woman and man is a
Yeah,
man.
woman is a woman. Mm-hmm.
And subhanallah, I said, what if I'm working there as an employee, same like him? Maybe he's from day to day, he come and explain to me his problem and his how he's suffering. By the time after a week, 1 month, he looked to me as his mom or grandma. He want to put his head on my shoulder.
Right.
And
You
to
know,
explain, to help us.
absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. In the
yeah.
beginning,
Let's start like this.
it absolutely, subhanallah, subhanallah, it's a fitna, and that's why when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says waqarna fi
Mm.
buyutikunna, it basically is letting us know that, listen, the more you go out, the more susceptible to fitna, and your deen is at risk. Just keep that one in mind. Your deen is at risk the more intermingling happens.
Mm.
You don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And yeah, Allah al-musta'an. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to stop the live stream, okay? And